Welcome everybody. Now we're going to get into DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. For some of us, this is nothing new. For some of us, this may be something brand new that you don't know about. DHCP, its purpose, its function, what it does is to, we call it in the real world, assign IP addresses, subnet masks, default gateways, DNS server addresses, and several other options, okay, that exist. So that's its purpose, dynamically. So when you turn on your computer or whatever end device, you can go ahead and get an IP address, right? So you don't have to, the IT personnel or IT individual, because you're probably one person doing everything, going around the entire, office, campus, hospital, whatever it is, putting in IP addresses manually. So this is what DHCP does. Now, in this lecture that I'm going to leave you with, we're going to have a lab. All right, there's going to be a lab there after the presentation. I'm going to show you how to, it's a makeshift DHCP server, obviously, in the packet tracer. Nowhere near an actual DHCP server, but the concept, as you need to get to your skull, is the concept is that we have DHCP servers, with Microsoft or Linux or whatever operating system you have, all right, a server operating system that provides this type of service to assign or for testing purposes, lease the IP addresses and its parameters, okay? So we'll do that, and we're gonna get into turning a layer 2 switch into a DHCP server to assign IP addresses. But pay attention to the labs, because I will do things so things don't work and then they work. So find out where it works and it doesn't work. So pay attention to the labs. We'll we'll actually have a router get an IP address from that layer 2 switch to assign it to that interface. And we run into some issues there because the scope, because that's what you do in the DHCP servers, you create scopes, multiple scopes for each particular VLAN or what have you. And in this case, we're only going to stick very basics to VLAN 1. It's the concept that you're trying to understand, but you see what happens and what you can run into and the error and jumping through hoops that you need to do, because one of the things that you can do also with DHCP server is reservations, which is mapping a layer 3 address to a specific, or a specific layer 3 address to a specific layer 2 address, which is a device that you want them to have that particular IP address always and forever. And then lastly, we'll get into the IP helper address and why we would use that. All right, so you'll see that in the lab. Pay attention to the presentation because we go over the process of DHCP. This is something that you need to know for your test. You need to know this, yes, not only for your certification exam, all right, because if it's in the book, they could ask it. If it's in the website, they could ask it. If it's in the PDF, they could ask it. They can ask it if they even only wrote one sentence. All right, so going through the books, all right, please look at every last little detail, every little tip box, everything, all right, and register your books. If you have Cisco Press books, register them at ciscopress.com/register. I'm not getting any money from that, just letting you know, because there's additional information on there that can help you out, okay? So enough said. Let me leave you with a presentation. And remember, after the presentation, there is a lab. Take a look at the lab and all the configurations that I do. There's like 4 separate labs within that one lab, 4 different types of configurations. Okay? I'll see you inside the presentation. Welcome, everybody. This is going to be understanding DHCP. Those of you that are brand new to Cisco or just networking in general, this would be very helpful for you. Those of you that have been studying or have taken Microsoft class or whatever, it will be very easy for you to understand. After this presentation, there will be a lab of different types of configurations for DHCP. So wait after the presentation because there's a lab that's attached to it. Now, the fundamentals of DHCP obviously is to assign, and let's be careful here, for testing purposes, you're not assigning anything, you're leasing. That's why I put leases IP addresses to end devices dynamically, right? That's what it should do, right? To end devices, not inter-network devices. But as you see there at the bottom, that's Laz's opinion, okay? But anyway, so that's what an IP address, that's what a DHCP does. It leases, and we say assign, all right? But in the test, they want you to say lease, all right? Because there is a lease attached to it, which I think by default is 8 days, or you can make it whatever you want, actually, all right? But leases IP addresses and other parameters. And obviously, if you're doing this, the IT personnel or the person in charge of creating these scopes, which is what it's called, they will have full control of the IP scheme. So you really need to know what you're doing when you're creating a scope, all right, that you're going to exclude certain addresses, because it's going to be wizard driven, you're doing it through a Microsoft server, or you can start at a higher number in the range. I mean, it all depends on how you want to do it, but you need to understand what your default gateways are, the subnet mask, DNS servers, any other options. If you're doing voice, what option do you need to put in there? Let's say like option 50, all right? Things like that would be like for voice. But you really need to understand your network and what IP addresses you're sending out, because you could be doing not only one scope, but multiple scopes, okay? So DHCP is an advantage on a local area network, because definitely you don't want to assign things manually to 300 or 1,000 or 1,000 computers. Heck, not even 20 computers. You want it to be done automatically, right? And printers and things of that nature. If you have no DHCP, that's why I say good luck. All right, you'll be assigning all the IP addresses of every device on your network statically. Now, again, look what it says there, Laz's opinion. All internetworking devices or internetworking and servers should be statically configured. Internetworking devices and servers. That's why I should have put that. And the internetworking devices. So like switches, wireless controllers. Okay. You can have them get an IP address from the DHCP server. Routers, they can, you'll see in the lab that they can, you can assign an IP address to a router or a switch, okay, dynamically. Why? No, I have no freaking clue why you would do that. I can see it to a printer, I can see a phone, computer, end devices, things that users are going to be, messing around with, but not inter-networking devices or servers. You don't want no. This should be the IP addresses you should be excluding from your network, so you can assign it statically, so they will always be there forever. Can you do a reservation? Yeah, you can, but no, you're gonna go insane doing reservations back and forth. No, you can do a reservation for printers, things of that nature. But when it comes to servers, and switches and routers, I send them statically. I mean, come on. All right. Don't take it to the limit. All right. Now, the process of DHCP is something you need to be very familiar with. Guaranteed this is going to be on the test. Okay. It's DORA, like Dora the Explorer, discover, offer, request, and acknowledge. I put ACK for short. It's acknowledgement. All right. And this is something that I've been teaching for I don't know how long now. And from the 64802 to now, okay, that's DHCP. The discover is in the form of a broadcast. That's the client, right? It has all zeros. You can see it right there. Clients do not have an IP address in the beginning, so they use all zeros, all right? So, and they send out a discover, which is all 255s. So if it's on the local area network, that's fine. But if you're going across a network, routers don't like that. And they're not, if it's your router, that's a DHCP server, they're not going to like that, and they're going to drop your packet, okay? But if it's in the local segment, it's a different story. But if you're trying to get across the network, right, it says, nah, this is a broadcast, bye-bye, all right? But we'll look at that when we get to the lab, all right? You'll see what I'm talking about. All right. So that's discover. That's the first part. That's what happens when a client wakes up. Oh, I need an IP address. And then the DHCP server or a DHCP server will say, hey, I got this IP address for you. Okay. And these are, and the parameters. So we'll look at the parameters later. All right. But the DHCP server will then tell you, hey, listen, I'm going to offer a lease to that client with a specific address. So the DHCP, hey, listen, I got this for you. And then the client's going to respond and say, oh, okay, give me that IP address that you just said you're going to give me with all its parameters. And then the server will say, okay, I acknowledge that you want this IP address, so I'm going to send you that IP address that I told you I was going to send you and all the parameters, okay? All the little things that go with it. And you get assigned that IP address, hopefully, if everything is running correctly. All right, but you need to know this process. You need to understand this process. And, I mean, for the test especially, because the terminology, discover, offer, request, and acknowledge, what happens first, okay? And know that discover is a broadcast, okay? Very important. That's the first thing that happens. But also understand it for your own network and why you may not be getting an IP address. And you'll see in the lab what we do, because there's like 4 different examples in the lab. And you'll see like, hey, what's going on? All right. So be very careful with DHCP because it's very easy to cause a conflict. All right. If you have multiple DHCP servers on the same VLAN, let's say, yeah, you're going to have a conflict and people are going to be getting IP addresses from different servers and you're going to have just a mess. So be very careful with stuff like that. Okay. So if you are the IT personnel in charge of that particular part of the network, make sure you know what's going on. Know your network. All right. So you have DHCP devices. Anything. You have servers. That's the only damn thing that needs to be a DHCP server. Okay, is your actual Microsoft or whatever server operating system you're using. That should be your DHCP server. Okay, an actual box that's a server, not a router, not a switch. Even though both of them could be DHCP servers, okay? And even the routers, as it says there, you can actually, I don't know who will do this, it's insane, that you could actually tell the interface of a router to, when you put interface F00 IP address, DHCP. So it can get a DHCP address. No. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why? It just doesn't make any, to me, it doesn't make any sense. It's my opinion, though. That's my opinion. Just like Cisco says in their book. It's not the opinion of Cisco, it's the opinion of the author. Well, this is Laz's opinion. Okay? All your internet working devices need to be statically assigned. All right? Not dynamically assigned. Only your end devices, okay? So yeah, have an actual DHCP server. I mean, come on, seriously. But you can turn your switches and you'll see how that's done. And you can turn your routers into that as well. All right. So you'll see all these things are done. But now, if you're and you're going to see this as well, if you're in a different broadcast domain, you need to type the following command, IP helper address. And after that, you don't hit enter, but after that, you put the IP address of the router. If you're using a router, in this case in the lab, we're using a router as a DHCP server. You need to point it to that server, but you got to look at where you're at and which way the traffic is flowing. So you put the nearest IP address of that router, because that router has multiple interfaces. So you put the IP address that you're going to, and then you put that IP address. Like in our case, I think it's 10.1.5, but you'll see in the lab. All right, and that will intercept, because since you're in a different broadcast domain, it's going to drop your packet because it's a broadcast address, and routers don't like to be yelled at. Okay, so the IP helper address is acting like a DHCP relay agent. It's going to intercept that particular frame, right? That broadcast. It says, listen, I'll take that for you. Okay. I'll go on your behalf to the DHCP server because you told me where it's at. And I'm going to get, since I'm coming from this network, because my IP address on my interface is from this network, I know which scope to get the IP address from, and I'll come back and I'll give you the IP address. That is what actually happens when you're across a broadcast domain, okay? So you need that IP helper address. Lastly, we talked about the DHCP parameters. Listen, it leases or assigns whatever an IP address. Okay, IP version 4, IP version 6, a subnet mask. IP version 6 is not a subnet mask; it's a prefix length. Normally, it's going to be 64. But for IP version 4, is an IP address, a subnet mask, the default gateway, which is your local router. All right, and then a DNS server address. It could be any router on the network. It doesn't really matter if it's in the same subnet or not. And then there's options. There's options which are numbers, and each number is a different option. But in Microsoft, you'll actually get a detail, of what each option does. But there's also options you can use on there as well. And you can also create reservations. If you're in a switch or a router and you're doing the DHCP pool, you go IP DHCP pool LAS, and you hit enter, and you put a question mark. There's going to be a command there that says address. That is where you actually can put the MAC address of a client, so you can map it to a particular address. You take an address and a MAC, you put the IP address and then the MAC address of the client, and then that's that mapping that you'll do, so they will always get that address. And that's fine, for end devices, for temporary people that are just working in your company for a short period of time. That's fine. You can do that for printers. Okay, that's not, like I said, end devices. And if you want to do it, let's say if you, for a router or a switch, and you want them to get an IP address assigned dynamically, then you can definitely need to do a reservation, because if not, you'll see what happens, because I do that scenario in the lab. All right, because the host will have one gateway address, and then your router will have another IP address, and they need to come back and fix everything else. So there you definitely need to do a reservation if that's what you're doing. But like I said, in my LAS opinion, okay, your routers do not need to have a dynamically assigned IP address. That's just, to me, that's insane. But again, that's my opinion. But that's DHCP. That's DHCP in a nutshell. It's just a dynamic host configuration protocol to assign IP addresses for your test lease. But it's just assigning IP addresses. You can do it on a switch. You can do it on a router. All right, it's completely up to you. And if you're going across broadcast domain, IP helper address. Definitely, these are the things that you need to focus on when you're taking the test. Doubt it that you'll configure it, but just in case, just look at the labs, see how it's done, because that's what's next, okay? Those particular labs, and you'll be good to go. You'll be good to go, and just understand this process right here, the DHCP client. Understand that particular process. I mean, the DORA. Understand that process, okay? Understand that process, because guaranteed they'll ask you something on that, okay? But that's DHCP. So with that said, I'll leave you with the lab. Pause, replicate it, do it over and over and over and over and over again until you get it done right, okay? And you'll be good to go. I'll see you inside the lab. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the lab. I hope sit back and relax, okay? Because these labs are going to be done from scratch. You see there gets bigger as we get across, okay? So just relax and understand the concepts, right? We already talked about it in the PowerPoint presentation. Now it's time to put it into action, okay? We know DHCP normally through a DHCP server, and in this author's opinion, it should be that way, okay? But whatever, all right? So in the packet tracer, you can make like a makeshift DHCP server if you don't have live equipment, and that's fine, all right? No server should have dynamic IP address. I'm sorry, I just got a blank there. All right, so I see here that I put 192.168.1.0. So I'm just going to do this one just completely different. Let's do a 172.16.20.0. This will be .1, right? That's my DHCP server. And then this will be 255.255.255.0. Okay. And then I'm not going to have I don't need a gateway. I'm not going anywhere. but let's just put one for the hell of it. 172.16.20.254. There is none. And we'll put an IP, a DNS server 172.16.20.2. All right, cool. So we got that. 20.1 is the DHCP server. 20.2, it's the actual DNS server, and 254 is the gateway, right? Supposedly the router's interface. All right, but with PCs, right, we want everything to be DHCP enabled, right? IPv4, we're doing IPv4. All right, so we'll wait till that fails. You see it was in a PIPA, and it failed. It gives it a PIPA address, an automatic private IP address, because that's where it's set to. That's where it's set to. And just let me show you real quick. And in my own particular network, okay, change adapter options, and I'll go to my Wi-Fi. I'm going to go to the properties. I'm going to go to TCP/IP properties, and you go to the alternate configuration. You see, that I don't have it for an APIPA, I have it for something else. All right, so you can change your alternate setting in your TCP/IP properties for IP version 4 or IP version 6. All right, you can change it. Well, there is no APIPA. There's an equivalent, right, to the APIPA, which is the link local. All right, but we're doing IPv4 now. So we set this PC to receive an IP address automatically, and you see that you're receiving that IP address. Now, listen, I've been told, it was a while back, somebody told me that Microsoft invented this. I never looked on it, never researched on that, if that's true or not. And just even if you don't get an IP address, you can use the APIPA to network locally in your network. Okay, that's fine and dandy, that's cool, but yeah, you don't want to do that because you have no control over that, unless you're going to actually use 169.254 as a scope in your particular DHCP server. So if you see somebody getting a APIPA, that means they're not reaching the DHCP server, therefore there's something wrong, okay? So yeah, that thing about reaching, having that as a, no, we're just going to use the APIPA for our network. No, fire that guy, okay? So then we go ahead and go to DHCP. All right, and I'm going to open this up so we can see everything nice and pretty. All right, boom, we're going to go services, and where's the DHCP? There it is, DHCP. Now this is a makeshift DHCP. This is by no stretch of the imagination is this a real DHCP server. All right, so I'm going to turn that service on. Now you see that there's a default pool there. All right, so we're going to create our own pool. All right, and we'll call it the Globed LAN, or Globed, just call it Globed, right? Globed, whatever. So what's the default gateway? Oh, it's 172.16.20.254. That's the gateway. All right, what's the DNS server address? Well, that's 172.16.20. I put 61. No. 16.20.2. All right, that's going to be the DNS server, and then we're going to start the IP address assignments on, let's say, 50. That'll be the first IP address that's going to be assigned. And you see you have a maximum users of 255. You can just leave it at that, or if you want to bring that down, let's say 100. You can, all right? And we're going to add this, all right? And then we click on it. Where is it? Right here, save. All right, but one of the things that I have found with the packet tracers, and you see it's kind of the same thing in the server pool, the default, you may want to change this to, let's say, just put that there, make it something completely, crazy and different, 173, there you go, just so we can have that there. The default, the server pool won't have a conflict with our pool. So this is the pool that we want to use, okay? I don't think you can remove it. No, so you can't remove the one that's there. So this is the one that we want assigning. This is the one that we want, all right? Not this one, Okay, so let's see if that's working. Now that's on. All right. All right. So let's see what we get from here. All right. We got a 20.2. We don't have a default gateway, so we're getting the actual server pool. So, you know, the one that we don't want. So let's go ahead and just change it to a 1.1.1.1. What? Oh, I forgot. Sorry. 1.1.1. Okay. And that's it. So we're going to save that. All right. But this is the one that we actually want. Right. And again, let's change it, see if it puts it up. Okay. And we're going to save that. That puts it at the top. So to make sure it gets it from that. So we got 172.20.254, 172.20.2, 20.40, starting IP address, a mask of 255. We got a maximum of 100 users. I don't really care about TFTP server or wireless controller address at this point. All right, you can add them here if you want, but right now I don't care. It's just using what's here. So everything is on. There's no save button. Well, here is the save button. I'm lying. Right, it's save. All right, so let's do this again. Let's go back over here. And let's do this. So we'll do like a ipconfig release, ipconfig renew, but I'm going to do this. It's in the packet tracer, it's pretty much the same thing. Boom. There you go. We got 172.16.20.40. All right. That's what I wanted. We got a CIDR 24. We got the gateway and we have the DNS server. So that is DHCP. We talked about the process in the presentation. It's sent out to Discover, right? Then you have the offer, all right, which is also broadcast, okay? And then you have the request, okay, give me that address, and then the acknowledgement, okay? Dora the Explorer. We went through that process, all right? That's what it went through just to get an IP address through an actual DHCP server, all right? And that's the way it should be done, people, okay? That you want your switches to be friggin' routers, and you want your switches to be DHCP servers, and your routers to be DHCP servers. You can do that. I don't personally agree with it, but whatever. So this was what the scheme. Let's put the scheme so we know the scheme that it was 172.16.20.0 with a 24. Okay, so that's what we did here. Actually using a DHCP server. Yeah, that's what you want to do. Now, again, when you do real world DHCP servers, it's not going to be like we just did right there. You have to go through the scope and create the scope. You can create reservations. You can give options. You can do a whole bunch of stuff, okay, when you're doing this. So it's going to be different, but it's a little wizard. Everything's a wizard driven, so it's not going to be like a big deal. Some people actually use third party software that does it for you. So what are we going to do here? This is the 192.168.1.0 network. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the switch into a DHCP server. Okay? All right. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and do that. You know, it's not that switch has other things better to do. So we'll turn this switch into a DHCP server. So we're going to get a host name of DHCP just for the hell of it. So just for the lab purpose. This is a lab, people. Okay? So just for the lab purposes. All right. So where do we do this DHCP? Oh, so we can just do it in global configuration. Awesome. IP, DHCP. Okay, well, we do the same thing. Excluded addresses, pool. So we're gonna do, this is the, what network is this that we're working on here? The 1.0, okay, 1.0 network. So let's do the excluded addresses first. Excluded addresses is 192.168.1.254, okay, and then we'll do the DNS server as 2. Okay, so those addresses are excluded from being assigned. All right, one's the gateway, one's the DNS server. Awesome. So then we can go ahead and do a pool. IP, DHCP, pool. All right, and then give me a word for the pool. I'm just going to call it LAS. This is the LAS pool. Awesome. So what can we do here? We can actually reserve addresses. All right, you need to get the MAC address. There's a reservation. You get the MAC address of the PC, and you put it on there. But let's just do the basics. Okay, so we're going to do default router. What's the default router's IP address? Well, 192.168.1.254. Okay. What's the DNS server? Set the name of the server. I don't want to. No, I just can put the. I don't need to put the name of the server. I can put the IP address. Yeah, there you go. 192.168.1.2. Yeah, I don't need to put the name. Just put the IP. All right. And then I'm not worried about the domain name. And then the network, obviously, that's required because it needs to pick from a range, right? So 192.168. This is here where you can tell it, you can tell it 1.0 and then put the mask. Or I can say, okay, I'm going to put 60, all right? And then I'm going to put 255.255.255.0. Right, so that will be, because you can do that also in the DHCP server. Instead of excluding addresses, you can actually start at a particular range. So this will go from 60 to 254, let's say. All right, and then that's it. All right, but we'll just say that right there. So again, there's other things you can do, like you put the address, and you can using the MAC address of the PC that you want. You can go ahead and do a reservation. Okay, you can do that as well. You have options, but here we're just doing the very basics of it. Do WR. You can't do that on the test. Remember, you gotta go to copy, run, start. So show start. It should be the I did WR. Okay, copy, run, start. All right, and then show start, and there it is right there. These are my excluded address. This is right here, and then we have. Oh, you still put the network as 1.0. What a bastard. Okay. And then 1.254. I guess the packet tracer, whatever. 1.2. So let's see if this DHCP switch/server is working. All right, so the desktop. Let's put it. Hey, it's not working. Why is it not working? Why is that not working? Pourquoi? That's the way you say it. I don't know. So I didn't get it. You guys saying, why isn't it? I don't understand. Why is that not getting that? Oh, I know. I know because show VLAN brief. We're on a switch. Everybody's on VLAN 1. Oh, okay. So we need to turn VLAN 1 on. Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense, right? And VLAN 1, all right, let's just turn it on. Just turn it on. Do WR. Okay. So let's see if it gets it now. Let's do that release. Renew. Man, it's still not working. It's still not working. Why is it still not working? Why is that? See, look, it's taking time. Oh, no, failed again. All right. I got a sneaky suspicion. I'm going to go into my pool. What did I call my pool? Last? Yeah, right. I call my pool last? Last pool. Okay. So I'm going to exit out of here. No, exit. I'm going to go IP DHCP pool. No, IP DHCP excluded addresses. 192.168.1.253. Not 1. Is it 1 or is it 100? It's 1. Okay. 1.253. All right. Why am I excluding that address? Because I'm going to go int VLAN 1 IP address 192.168.1.253.255.255.255.0. Okay. Now right there, don't do it again just for the hell of it. Do WR. So now we do a show start. And we see we have 3 excluded. One is the routers, which we don't have. And then the 253. Okay. So we got that. We got the DNS server address in there. All right. And which is excluded. All right. We got that. And then we go all the way to the bottom. We can see that this has an IP address as well. That is turned on. All right. So let's see if that made any difference. Let's do a release renew. No! Look at that. Now it's working. So that, what does that tell you? Okay, that you need to turn on your VLAN 1 and it has to have an IP address within that particular range for you to get an IP address. Always, that's what the packet tracer is telling us, and all experts are telling us that all you need is a packet tracer. Okay, so there you go. Let's do a release renew. All right, so it can give us an IP address, give us the same one. All right, cool. All right, so that's it. You saw that? All we did was just a basic configuration, and we just look at the show start for that. Control C. So we did go to VLAN 1, and VLAN 1, we put in an IP address, that 1.253 with a mask, and then we turned it on. That's when it worked, when we put the IP address. Other than that, it didn't work. You saw that. All right, and we do a show start, not startup. That's a different language. Okay, I'm trilingual now. We have the excluded addresses. You got to exclude them, or you're gonna have a conflict. Okay, you have that. All right, and then you have your pool of addresses 1.0. So you have that. All right, and if whatever it has, show IP DHCP binding. Oh, look at that binding. Okay, so now we can see. There you go. Okay, you can go ahead and look at that, show IP bindings. That's one of the things that they had in the previous test. I'll have it in the same one again. All right, we're not doing relay. We'll be doing that a little bit later. All right, and we'll be doing snooping in another lecture. All right, but this is setting up DHCP. So now we just set up DHCP on the actual switch. Okay, so there you go. Not a big deal. Now your switch is a DHCP server. Why? I don't know. That's what Microsoft servers are for. Okay, not switches or routers, but whatever. Now you know how to do it. Okay, so now we're going to turn our router into a DHCP server. All right, well, not even better. Even better. Let's do this. Let's for the router, let's assign an IP address on this particular router, the F00, that's what it is, because 24 is the switch. On the F00, let it get assigned an IP address from the switch. How about that? So we'll create a DHCP server here as well on this particular network. Okay, and it's all VLAN 1. All right, just making things simple, just so you can see the command. But we're gonna go in the router, and I'm laughing because really, who does this? Who assigns their router? And if it's, let's say that's the only router you have in your company, who in the world is assigning it a friggin' dynamic IP address? Who does this? Please give me feedback. Okay, internetworking devices, servers should have all static IP addresses. Okay, don't be lazy, do the work. I can see end devices, okay, reservations, and then you have, you tell it your IP will expire in 30 days, whatever the case may be, like you do in Microsoft with the users that it's a temp coming in and you allow them access for only a certain period of time, and then you not delete that user account or disable that user account. That's the word I was looking for. Disable that user account after a certain period of time. So the same thing here. But to actually assign your router, an interface on a router, dynamic IP addresses, really? Yeah, that's just being too lazy, but whatever. So let's do the same thing here on the switch, but this is the 100 network. So look at different ways what we can do. All right, look at the different ways that we're going to go. We didn't have a router over here. Now we do. All right, so this is the 100 network. So now we actually have a gateway. Do we have a server on here? No, these are just end devices. Okay. All right, so look at these little labs just in there so you guys can play with. All right. This is too funny. Okay, all right. Host name, DHCP. No, you can't do that. Underscore. Ooh. Underscore router. Underscore. Well, really, it's really underscore switch. underscore router. Let's call it that. Hey, listen, I've seen longer names, okay? All right, so let's open this up. Let's open this up here. All right, so we're on the switch. So we know we got to do IP, DHCP. I'm going to do excluded addresses. Okay, so we're in the 100 network. All right, so the excluded addresses are going to be 192.168.100.254. The switch address, 253. The DNS address, 100.2. All right, so those three addresses, right, the gateway. Well, no, we don't want that excluded. We want that to be assigned. So I'm going to say, well, it's not going to be assigned unless we do a reservation for it. So we're just going to give anything to it. All right. I'll just leave the exclusion there, or whatever. But it doesn't really matter. It's going to give it an IP address within the network. So I'm going to go IP DHCP pool. I don't know. I would just call it test, whatever. All right, so let's see the default router. Let's put that in there. Let's see what happens. 192.168.100. I didn't create a reservation. I'm just putting, hey, this is what the address is. Okay. The DNS server. Let's see if it creates a conflict. I want to see that. DNS server 192.168.100.2. Okay. The network is 192.168.100.254. Up. Silly man. The network 255.255.255.0. All right. So let's go back because that's something we didn't do it. Copy, run, start. Oh, and I got to put an IP address on VLAN 1. And, wait a minute, conft. Did I put 253 on there? Yeah, okay. Conft int VLAN 1, IP address 192.168.100.253, 255.255.0. Okay, and then we're going to no shut that. Do WR, Control Z, let's take over again. There's that, lovely. There's my exclusions, right in here. There's my rain. Oh, there's my network anyway. All right, there's my DNS server, default gate. Well, that could be wrong. I want to see what's going to happen because I put that this is the router's gateway. I didn't reserve it. I didn't do a reservation. So it may just assign it from the pool. So in this case, if it assigns this to the PCs, they're going to have an issue. Okay. And then we go all the way to the bottom. We have the switch IP address. So let's see. First, let's take a look at our PCs. All right. So let's assign it. Let's see if they get assigned. All right, cool. 254, 100.1, 2. Right. They're good to go. They're good to go. Desktop. All right. DHCP. All right, we're cool. We're cool here. All right, awesome. Now, here in the router, I'm going to say no. We're going to enable conf t. We're just going to say host name. We're just going to call it silly. Okay. And then interface F0/0. All right, we're going to do IP. IP address. Yeah, IP address. Yeah, IP address, and then DHCP. Okay, and we're just gonna do no shot, obviously, to turn on that address. So let's fast forward through time. You know, it takes the packet tracer a little time, whatever. So let's go back to the router. Let's take a look at it. It should be interesting. Show IP in brief. And you see it's 100.4. So that's already a problem because we're saying that our gateway is 254. So that's incorrect. So we need to go back into here, right? So let's take a look at our pool. Show start. I use the show start. Make it, yes, yeah. There's our pool. This is wrong. So we gotta do conf t IP DHCP pool test. Right? We gotta say no. Copy. Paste. Right? That's incorrect. Okay. And so we're gonna say default router 192.168.100.4, because that's what it got assigned, right? And then we need to exit and then say, that's why it would be a reservation. That's why it would be a reservation, so you know exactly what address. So since I put the 254, I should have made a reservation with a MAC address of the interface of the router, so that would be the one in, so I don't have to go back and do this. And then I would to do IP DHCP excluded address 192.168.100.4. Do WR, Control Z. Let's take a look at this now. Show start. So now we have a 4, right? Because that's what they had on the fast Ethernet. So that's excluded. We told it that that is the default router, but if I wanted to do it correctly, I should have created a reservation. I should have gotten the MAC address of the F00 on the router, made where it says we have the option in the switch, right? Config T, interface, not interface, IP address, IP DHCP. All right, okay. Pool test, sorry. There's, wait a minute. Oh, here it is. There's the address, right? We would have to use this command, right, to do a reservation. So we need to put the address that we want, the 254, and put the MAC address next to it. So that would be the one that we would use as the default router. Here, it got assigned that IP address automatically out of the range, but the computers were getting wrong information because the computers were actually getting a 254. They would have never reached the gateway. So let's go here. Let's release renew. That's the same thing as config, IP config. See, now it's got a 4, right? Now it's got a 4. And let's do what you really would do. All right, you will go to the command prompt. You do IP config / release, up arrow, renew, right? You wait. And now you have the 4. Okay. So let's see if we still have the 4 here. And we do. All right. So, all right, we're cool. We still have the 4. Show IP in brief. Show IP in brief. All right, there's the 4. So now let's see if we can ping our gateway, which is 4, ping 192.168.100.4. And we can. Before we had 254, so that would have been an issue, wouldn't have. So if you are going to assign, why, I don't know, if you're going to assign your router's interface an IP address through DHCP, you're going to have to make a reservation. It's just like people do for printers. People do, they say, hey, this printer is always this printer, so we're going to give this printer an actual IP address. It will never change because we have lease times, correct? We talked about this in the presentation. You have lease times. All right, that it expires, whether 8 days or hours or whatever it is that you want to put on there. So if you use an actual reservation and you map it to a MAC address and you say, hey, this is your IP address always and forever, then that's what it's going to be. And when you're doing your pool, when you put the default router, you would put that particular address so it can be assigned to the clients. Because you saw that the clients got assigned a 254. But the router, since I didn't put a reservation, it got assigned a random IP address from the pool, which was 4. Therefore, the clients will not be able to get to the router. You will then need to go in there and change the IP address to what the router got, and then put it in the default excluded, put it in the range, and then release renew. That's too much work. So you would create a reservation. You would just put it in statically. You would avoid all this altogether. Okay. But for those of you that I just don't want to do that, just because. Okay, so here are going to be a bigger, right? Here we're really going to do, what happens if these guys are DHCP enabled and you have a DHCP server here. You can see this is DNS. I'm actually using a DNS server now, so we can use it. All right, so we're going to turn the router this time. The router is going to be our DHCP server, but we need to give it IP addresses. I give it static IP addresses, okay? I'm going to put this all the way over here because that's what you should do, all right, to a router or internet working device. I mean, what is that giving thing, dynamic IP addresses? I don't know. Oh, sorry. I typed the wrong thing, no. Control C. Okay. Enable. We just call this router 4. Okay. Conf T, host name R4. All right. Interface. Hey, look. A static IP address. How about that? IP address 192.168.200.254. 255.255.255.0. Hey, what a concept. Interface F0/1. It's not that difficult, ladies and gentlemen. IP address 10.1.1.5. 255.255.255.252. I'm using a 30. No shut. Stop using 31, people. Okay. Do WR. All right. Now I'm going to go here. This is in the 210 network. All right. So we'll just put it right there so we can see it. All right. There we go. I'm going to say no. No. Enable conf T. Host name R5. All right. Int F00. Why do I do that first? I actually see green as I go along. IP address. There's no rhyme or reason. All right. 10.1.1.6. 255.255.252. No shut. Cool. Turn green. Awesome. Int F0/1. IP address 192.168.210. Sorry, 210.254. 255.255.255.0. No shut. Do WR. Cool. All right. Now we got IP addressing, but we're in different broadcast domains over here. We're going across a router. So we need to do some type of routing. We only have 2 routers. I'm just gonna put the default route. Okay, just to make it simple. I'm gonna do IP route 0000. Ooh, one too many zeros. One less zero. 0000. And then it's the exit interface just to make it directly connected. F01. F0/1. All right, cool. Because what that did is create my gateway of last resort, show IP route. Right? There's your static route that I just did. Default candidates, right? Static route. Here it is, gateway of last resort. Okay, and then because they're stub routers. No big deal. That's not gonna make a match in the routing table, so you use your gateway of last resort. So IP route 0000. 0000, and then there's going to be F0/0. There's a hyphen. 0/0. Enter. No shot. Why did I do that? I have no idea. Do WR. All right. Show IP route. There you go. Done deal. All right. Okay. So now we have no IP addresses. None. But let's give the DNS server an IP address. Let's do that. All right. Because it's a server. And it should have 192.168.100.2. Well, there's 200, sorry. 200.2, okay? And then 192.168.200.254. And that's the IP address of my gateway. 192.168.200.2. I have my own DNS server. How about that? So just to make it a little bit more fun, I'm going to go to DNS in here. I'm gonna create a host record, but by no means of the stretch of the imagination is this anywhere near how you do it in a real DNS server. But hey, I'm gonna say globed .net, and then the IP address is 192.168.200.2, and I'm gonna add that. Don't forget to turn it on. All right. So let's save this information, and then I just want to edit this file. I don't want it to say Cisco Packet Tracer. I wanted to say globe ed e-learning. Okay, and then we'll just save that. Yes, we'll write it. So let's test it out before we go anywhere else. We go to the browser, and then we go to globed.net. Hey, DNS is working. How about that? And let's see, globed e-learning. All right, so DNS is working, but nobody has an IP address. So we're going to turn this router right here into a DHCP server. Okay, let's do that. Config T. All right, so we can do IP, DHCP. What do you want to do? I want to do excluded address. Okay, which am I excluding? 192.168.200.254, right? And then I'm going to do 200.2. That's a DNS server. I really don't care about my switch getting an IP address right now because, like I said, internal networking devices need to have statically assigned IP addresses. Don't be lazy. All right, so the DNS server is excluded. The gateway is excluded. And we can exclude the IP address that we will configure on the switch because eventually we will. So that would be one not to be part of the range. You will exclude that because you can do a range. I'm just doing one by one, but you can do a range of IP addresses. I could have done 250 to whatever. So you can also do a range. You don't do it one by one. All right, but it's not a big thing here. So that's it. So those are the 3 addresses. That's all. All right, and then I'm going to create the pool. IP DHCP pool. All right, and we'll call this globed, right? And then the default router, hey, we already know the IP address for that, don't we? 192.168.200.254. And we don't need to make any changes because that's what it is. All right, and then the DNS server, we know that what it is, right? 192.168.200.2 because we assigned it, all right, statically. All right, and then we'll do the network. We're in the 192.168.200.0, 255.255.255.0. The WR, Control Z. Let me do a copy run start just in case. Show start, and there's my stuff. All right. Let's go ahead and take a look. This is static. It will be only this computer getting an IP address. And then we go here, like Visual Release Renew, bada bing, bada boom. There we go. Let's test it out. Let's go to the web server, globed.net. Lovely. Look at that. Awesome. We don't need to test pinging. If we got to the DNS, we can ping. Now, we need to create, this is a DHCP server. These guys don't have IP addresses. We need to create an IP address for these guys, right? So let's create a new scope for them, right? All right, so we can do config T. Let's do their exclusions, right? IP, DHCP. Excluded addresses is 192.168.210.254. Enter. We'll do 253 for the switch. And that's it. Because they don't have any DNS servers in there. The DNS is already excluded on the other scope. So we're good to go, right? They're in a different network. So all we're excluding is what's in there. So these are the only 2, the router and the switch. We have no servers on this side or anything like that. All right. So IP DHCP pool, and we'll call this LAS. Okay. So who's your default router? Well, my gateway. Default router, it's 192.168.210.254. It's my gateway. All right. Who's the DNS server? DNS server is 192.168.200.2. That's the DNS server. Okay. And the network, all right, it's 192.168.210.0, 255.0. Right? So copy that, Control Z, let's take a look at it, show start. So here's a Globed, we have its exclusions, we know that's working. You see? Copy, run start, it's a packet tracer thing. Show, start again. There's the 210, right? Here's the 210, 254, 210, 253. There's the Globed, there's the LAS. All right, cool. So we got two scopes now. So let's go ahead and change this. Ooh, a lot of work. All right. Hey, I didn't get one. Let's try this guy. Everything's correct. I mean, my gateway is my gateway. That has to be it. That's not wrong. We're in a different broadcast domain, gentlemen, ladies. Okay. The process of DHCP is DORA. The D is for discover, and it's in a broadcast format. So when this sends out, right, he's all zeros, right? And then he says, hey, I need an IP address. Well, routers don't like to be screamed at. All right, so he sees a broadcast, is going to dump it. So what you need to do is on this router, inside the interface int f0 slash, oh, wait a minute. What's that interface? It's not 0, it's 1. 1, okay, which is facing the LAN. You need to put the IP helper address and point it to the default router, which, as if you're going that way, if the traffic is flowing this way, that would be 10.1.1.5, right? 10.1.1.5. Okay. Do WR. All right. So let's see if that's true. It's still not working. Why is that? As you can see, the packet tracer has its issues. It takes its time working. So you got the 210.2, the 210.254, 200.2. Let's make sure the computer has a proper IP address. Oh, packet tracer, oh, packet tracer. There it is. So the IP helper address it's the DHCP relation. It will intercept, okay, that discover, right, that broadcast turned into a unicast. Go on your behalf and say, hey, I need an IP address for this particular scope because this is where I'm coming from. Get an IP address, come back and give it to you. Okay? So that's what an IP helper address does. So if you're across a different domain or different subnet, you'll be able to, on a different VLAN, be able to get IP addresses assigned to you. Okay? But you need that IP helper address. And let's see if we can go to Globed, globed.net. Okay. There we go. It took a little bit, a lot of traffic going across the one area network. But we got it. So you saw all these different ways. Here we had to use the IP helper address. We created the scope on the router. We put static IP addresses, right? We did an actual DNS server. Here, the router itself, if you were to silly router, show IP in brief, okay, it says, look what it says. That's how that router got its IP address assigned. Really? And all we had to do was just turn on, and when we put IP address, we just said DHCP, all right? So, yeah. So the switch is the DHCP server. Just like the switch here, it's the same thing, the DHCP server. And then here we did an actual DHCP server. If you're going to practice this, remember you have a default server pool. Make sure that your pool is on top. Just make a change on it like I did so it'll jump up to the top, okay? And just make this something just completely friggin' different so it doesn't conflict with you. All right, but again, DHCP, you can see we did a bunch of different labs. We did 1, 2, 3, and then 4. 4 different labs. This one included the IP helper address, multiple scopes, okay? And it's just a matter of just practice this. Look at it, rewind it, pause it, do it again. But it's just learn the same concepts with DHCP. It doesn't matter if it's on a switch. It doesn't matter if it's on a router, okay? The bottom line is that it's still DORA. That's the process, okay? That's still going to happen. But again, where do you want to set your DHCP server? Are you really going to set your DHCP server? You know, here's my DHCP server here. This is let's say this is New York and this is Miami. All right, Miami is going to go ahead and get its IP address from the New York DHCP server. Really? You're going to go across a wide area network to get an IP address. I can see if your ISP is giving you an IP address because, you know, we need to get to the internet and all that good stuff. But for internally, for, you know, you have a DHCP server for that. For those of you that don't want to put DHCP server for whatever reason that may be, and you want your switch to do it, well, you can do it. You want your router to do it, okay. You have your core router, your distribution router, you know, your access router, and you have your switches. I mean, I don't know, but whatever your network design is. But these are all the different ways that you can mess around with DHCP. And yes, you can create reservations on these things. All right. So just be careful and design it, plan it, test it before you go out there and do it. Will you be tested on all these different methods? Obviously not. This one here, definitely pay attention to the IP helper address pointing to the actual router. This one here that actually sets the interface of the routers to a DHCP to get its IP address from a DHCP. And this one here is just turning the switch into a DHCP server. Just look at the address feature when you're creating the pool. That's to do the reservation. And you need to give that MAC address or whatever device and add it to it. You'll never be tested on this, okay? But I just want to show you what normally should happen is a DHCP server. All right, but there you go. DHCP. Oh, wow. All right. See you guys in the next one.